you worked for a private equity company. And so tell me about that. How did you go from there to then saying, this is not what I want to do? I would love to hear more about that journey.
Yeah, so before I ever really got into the fitness world or doing what I do for work now, I was in the corporate healthcare world. So I was a physician recruiter and a healthcare administration recruiter. And that was a fun job, but it was a lot of work. It was very stressful because if I didn't perform, I didn't get paid. It was all performance-based, all commission only. And then I got into what is called the ancillary lab services world. And that is a very simple way of putting it. We were basically providing like lab services, like the early cortisol, salivary testing and things like that to physicians that were trying to grow their practices. It was a grind though. Everything that I was doing, my focus was on making money. My focus was on how can I achieve this, ultimate success financially, because that's why everyone's going to love me. And in the process, my health went to total garbage. It was like I was close to 300 pounds at one point.
Wow.
And
like 300 pounds of muscle? Or
no. I mean, there was some muscle there because I didn't stop. Like I still worked out one day a week or so, but I went from being a long distance runner and occasional lifter to, pounding 8 to 10 Monster energy drinks per day and not the zero ones, like the fully leaded ones, and just going all the way. And yeah, that was a bad recipe for disaster.
So you were focused on the money, you were getting some money, but in order to get that money, you were kind of compromising your health. And this is something that you've been passionate about. What made you then kind of realize, I want to shift back to my health rather than just money?
Yeah, it's funny because there was like a funny call to action for me. And people usually think when they have to change their health that it's a doctor telling them they're going to die, or it's something like you got to change your health, this big giant thing. For me, it was simple. I was sitting in the parking lot of a Jack in the Box that I had just gone through the drive-thru. And I used to get Jack in the Box tacos, those translucent, scary looking things because there's so much oil and grease in them that you can literally see what's going on inside that taco. And I loved those things. And anyway, so I'm sitting there in the parking lot after going through the drive-thru, and I'm thinking that like no one's gonna see me because I'm hiding in my car, right? And like this acquaintance of mine, this person that I know, not a close friend, but just literally someone that I know, drives by in his green 4Runner and totally just makes solid eye contact with me, like mid-bite. And he just waves. He just kind of like acknowledges, hey Tom, what's going on? And it was at that weird moment where I was like, had that been a close friend, it wouldn't have had the same impact, because I would have been like, that's a close friend that knows who I am. But the fact that I'm like, this regular person that's just an acquaintance of mine just nonchalantly waved as if he just expected me to be at Jack in the Box eating tacos, because and it clicked. I'm like, I'm not fooling anybody. Like my acquaintance just saw me stuffing my face with tacos. And it didn't change it wasn't like, oh my gosh, there's Thomas at Jack in the Box. It was more like, yeah, that's exactly what I expect that guy to do. And it was at that point where I was like, I just don't want to do this anymore. Like that, so it was literally stuffing my face with Jack in the Box tacos where I'm just like, this is just not me. Like this, it's not.
So now you kind of had this like moment where it's like, I want to get my life in order.
Yeah.
And so for you though, that was your health. But now, were you still working at the company, or were you now transitioning to doing something on your own?
So at this point, I was transitioning. So at this point, it was kind of like, okay, what is it that I really want to do next, right? And actually, the funny thing is that even while I was like this, I still had aspirations of being in fitness. Like I always wanted to. I always read bodybuilding magazines when I was a kid, and like I was always into it. And I always worked out in high school, and I was in pretty good shape in high school. So it was kind of like it was always in the back of my mind, being like, I kind of got really overweight as a bulk that had gone out of control. Like honestly, like I started putting on muscle, started doing all this, and then I ended up in a super sedentary role. And that's where everything kind of changed. So it's like the seed was already planted. I'm like, I know I can get back to that if I just get my head on straight.
Is that when then you got onto YouTube and said, you know what, or what did you do then? Like, okay, so you were like, all right, I'm going to change my life. What did you do?
Yeah, so for me, and that's where I had resources, fortunately, as far as like the industry that I was in. So the physicians that I knew that were kind of on the cutting edge, like doing different things, they had mentioned like keto, they had mentioned intermittent fasting to me before as like things I may want to consider, and it kind of fell on deaf ears. But then I got interested in it and I started, okay, let's try this. And I actually started with intermittent fasting first because it made more sense to me.
Can you explain what that is?
So for me, it's like intermittent fasting worked great because I would just go like 16, 17 hours without eating and then have defined periods of time where I would eat. It was just hey, don't eat here, eat here. So it was like, at that point in time, I was doing it just about every day, just 16-hour fasts every day and consolidated eating periods. And I lost like 50 pounds just doing that really quick.
So you ate like between, let's just say noon and 8 p.m. and then from 8 p.m. or so to noon, you just wouldn't eat.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I mean, and it had some flexibility to it. Like I wasn't like super strict on specific times. And just by the sheer nature of caloric restriction with that, I lost weight, right? I started falling off. And then I kind of got introduced into keto. I'm like, this works too. Added keto into the mix. And it just worked really well for me overall for weight loss. Then I realized like, okay, this is cool. Like I've lost weight. Now let's see how far I can take this. Like I'm a very one-track mind person. So I'm like, I am going to take this all the way. And I told my wife, I'm like, I'm gonna try to get on the covers of some magazines. And my wife's always been my biggest cheerleader. She kind of laughed at me and she's like, you're such a dork. She's like, but you'll do it. Like it's not, like she's like, you do whatever you put your mind to. Like you're young and you already have a decent level of success, like whatever. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go for it. So within 6 months, I had landed my first magazine cover after that. Wow. So I got my, my weight down and yeah. So because of that, I got this mainstream media exposure just because of the magazine covers, but as you know, it all matters like what you do with it. So I kind of took those and I put them on social media and I kind of talked about my story a little bit, just being like, yeah, I went from kind of corporate grind to this and like, yeah. And it just kind of caught fire. I think my story just resonated with people.
If you enjoyed this short clip from my longer videos, here's another clip that I think you'll love. And while you're at it, if you're interested in learning more about how to start generating passive income, our team put together an amazing guide on how to start generating passive income for free. All you got to do is click that button right over there. Thank you for watching, and as always, keep hustling.